India shall be an open economy. It will be a place where people can do business.
Our idea is to give encouragement to local manufacturing, and this is very important because if investment and manufacturing activities take place, then jobs are naturally created.
This is going to help, and it's going to, I think it's a step in the right direction.
It's a matter of pride that India has now reached the stage as one of the largest receivers of foreign direct investment.
This is a game changer and will bring in investment, jobs, more global connectivity.
Well, with these announcements, the government claims India has become now the most open economy in the world. We'd love to hear what you think about that. Today, the government liberalized FDI norms in a slew of sectors, but here on this Big Picture special, we'll be focusing on one, that's the single brand retail space, because the new rules that have been announced today exempts a foreign retailer with cutting edge technology from that cumbersome 30% local sourcing norm for 3 years, and then additionally another 5 years. If you were to read it very simply, that could mean that a company, let's just say Apple, for instance, because that has been in the news. So Apple can now bypass local sourcing and could open its first stores in India. On tonight's show, we will be analyzing how much clarity this FDI announcement provides to investors who will be interested in setting up shop in India, and what will, of course, be the challenges. I will be joined by Vivek Gupta, who's a partner at M&A at the BMR Advisors. He'll be with me in a few moments from now. I'm Ronojoy Banerjee, and the Big Picture starts now. But first, the headlines. Stocks rally ahead on Wall Street as fears of voters choosing to leave the EU referendum recede. The Dow Jones, S&P 500 and the Nasdaq all trading more than 1% higher. A live report from Nasdaq later on the show. Donald Trump fires his campaign manager Corey in a sign of turmoil within the Trump campaign. Latest poll shows him trailing Hillary Clinton in the race to the White House. Plenty of action in the week ahead. We bring you up to speed with all the developments likely to unfold in the upcoming EU referendum on the nuclear supplier group meet that's going to be taking place in Seoul. Well, in the spotlight tonight, in a major push towards its reforms drive, the government today made some radical changes to the FDI policy in 9 sectors. It has dropped the caveat of the state-of-the-art technology for companies which want to invest beyond 49% in defense through the government approval route. Not just that, FDI and airlines also has now been allowed up to 100%, though government approvals will be needed beyond 49%. More importantly, there is good news for companies like Apple, because the government has now amended the single brand retail policy. It has waived off the 30% local sourcing norm for 3 years for products with the state-of-the-art and the cutting-edge technology. I'm now joined by Vivek Gupta, who's a partner, mergers and acquisitions at BMR Advisors in London. Thank you very much, Vivek, for joining us here on the Big Picture. So just tell us a little bit about, the FDI and single brand retail that's been announced today. So in a sense, companies now have up to 8 years to meet that 30% sourcing norm. Good news, you'd say?
Yes, absolutely. I think directionally, this government has signaled the intent that they are happy to liberalize retail. Ever since we had the Modi government come in, one was quite clear that they will pursue the reform agenda, but one wasn't quite so clear as to whether that reform agenda would extend to the retail sector or not. But by making this change, I think they've indicated very convincingly that they're happy to open up retail in the same manner as previous governments were wanting to. So I count this as a very big change. I think this can cause the 30% local sourcing norm was something that was holding back a lot of retailers. Waiving it for 3 years and then extending it for potentially another 5, I think could be a big game changer in the single brand retail sector in India. And while on this topic, I'd also like to mention the change that has been made, which was announced earlier actually as part of the budget, on the food industry side, where you're permitting food products processed and manufactured to be offered through FDI and trading I think that's a pretty big one too. Because
yes, we'll come to that, Vivek. In fact, food processing.
Okay.
Absolutely, Vivek. In fact, that is one of the questions I want to throw at you separately. But let's just come back and let's just talk a little bit about this and the clarity which has now come about because of the government announcement. Have you been able to find out from any of the from the policy note that the government issued in terms of from what, like when will this 8-year or this 3-year plus 5-year period, be effective from? Because in November, when the government announced, reforms in single brand retail, at that point it said that the 5-year, clause wherein a company had to meet that 30% sourcing norm within 5 years was going to be counted from the day it opened its first outlet. So in that sense, I mean, have you got any sort of clarity in terms of when will this, when will it be effective from this 3 plus 5 year window that companies have now been given?
See, the current announcement is only a policy press note. One would expect to see the detailed amendments flow through in terms of amendments to the BIPP policy per se. And once those wordings are in place, then one would know as to how technically one would apply it. However, I would say that the same principle should apply. So earlier, if we were counting the 5-year period from the date of opening of my first retail outlet, 3 plus 5 should also be counted similarly.
Right. Absolutely. What's interesting though, Vivek, is that as far as single brand retail is concerned, the government has retained terms like state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technology. But interestingly, if you look at the announcement in the defense sector, they've actually dispensed with it. So in that sense, do you feel there is a certain amount of contradiction, or are you convinced with the fact that in case of defense, state of the art may mean something totally different vis-a-vis, let's say, the technology or the single brand retail space?
See, this is a phased process. In terms of defense, what we've seen is, because of the clause pertaining to the state-of-art technology, there was some ambiguity on the conditionalities that would be imposed. And defense is a very different sector too, in the sense that most defense players with access to technology would be comfortable coming in with a majority-owned technology ownership kind of position. The sector per se itself is high technology, and therefore perhaps the use of the words state-of-art technology in the earlier policy pronouncement was being more careful than necessary. And we pointed this out at the time that policy came about. That was a move in the right direction, but today, having seen the experience, I think the government is convinced that in that sector there is no need for the word state-of-art technology, because defense investments by definition happen in high technology areas. Now, in terms of single brand, I think the use of the words for now. Remember, this is a very important change the government is making. 3 years, you've already relaxed. Additional 5 years, attributing it to selling products with state-of-art and cutting-edge technology, I think is the right policy pronouncement for now. Let us watch carefully experience in this space and then see where it goes.
Indeed, absolutely, Vivek. But then again, the question, is that who will define state-of-the-art cutting-edge technology? And also, when you're looking at, let's say, the smartphone market, for instance, all the manufacturers will claim that what they are doing is state-of-the-art. So in that sense, how will the government differentiate between, let's say, an Apple on one hand or a Xiaomi on the other?
See, I think the government has very clearly indicated its willingness to welcome foreign investment. And that's the big takeaway for me. I would expect the government to interpret each case in a manner that is positive, that is constructive. The big takeaway from the use from the word state-of-art technology, etc., is that if it is for the shirt that I'm wearing, perhaps it's not state-of-the-art technology. But if it's the instrument that I'm talking to you on right now, whether it's manufactured by Apple or someone else, I think it would fall within the definition of cutting-edge technology. We leave this to the government to interpret, but today, I think the message for today is that the government has very positively responded to genuine suggestions made by various retailers and is trying to create an environment where more foreign investment can flow through into the economy.
Point well taken, Vivek. So therefore, we should look at the big picture, not get lost in details right now. As you said, the government will come out with some clarification sooner rather than later, and we should all wait for that. But let's just come back to this food processing, something that, you alluded to before this. So essentially now this announcement of allowing 100% FDI, under the automatic route in food, in food products, including e-commerce, this would essentially mean multi-brand in food retail, isn't it?
Yes, that is right. Multi-brand and food retail in respect of food products manufactured or produced in India. So if you have a cheese from Amsterdam, that could not retail in such a store. But if you had food products manufactured or produced in India, you could have a Walmart or a Tesco or a Sainsbury opening up a food store in India.
Right. Could this in any way be interpreted? As journalists, we like interpretation. We like to sort of at least try and make some intelligent guesses as to what the government is going to do. So in that sense, is that perhaps a sign of the government maybe, in the future warming up to FDI and multi-brand retail, which of course BJP has been completely staunchly against?
So I think I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is an indication of the government's willingness to open up multi-brand retail in toto, but I do think that this is a very important move for a reasonably sensitive sector. This announcement, when it came through as part of Finance Minister's speech, Finance Minister's budget speech, took us somewhat by surprise, and we were closely watching to see whether this would indeed get translated into a policy pronouncement. It seems to have gotten there. And therefore I think that this is directionally, without saying that the government is going to loosen up on its position in multi-brand retail, I think this is a very, very important directional move by the government. The implications of this are you could have a Sainsbury in Connaught Place selling food products. And this was unthinkable a year ago.
Right. Vivek Gupta, pleasure to have you join us here on The Big Picture and taking us through the fine print. We'll come back to you once the government comes out with a more detailed note. But thank you for joining us here on The Big Picture. We need to slip into a quick break now, but on the other side, we're getting a lot of action. Firstly, Bertha Coombs will be joining us live from NASDAQ.